I admit candidly in all of these cases, Mr. Waters, that I took money that was not mine and I shouldn't have done it. I hate the fact that I did it. I'm embarrassed by it. I'm embarrassed for my son. I'm embarrassed for my family. And I don't dispute that I did it.
Alec Murdaugh admitted to financial crimes in his double murder trial, but prosecutors are now calling him a liar again. I'm Michelle Yu, bringing you the latest news in the Alec Murdaugh saga in South Carolina. The disgraced attorney is currently serving 2 life sentences for the June 2021 murders of his wife Maggie and son Paul on the family's property. Now, during Murdaugh's double murder trial, prosecutors argued that Murdaugh carried out the killings to avoid accountability for extensive criminal history.
No one knew who he was. No one knew who this man was. He'd avoided accountability his whole life. He had relied on his family name. He had a powerful family. He carried a badge and used that authority. He lived a wealthy life. But now finally, he was facing complete ruin. His father, who he idolized, who I worked with on occasion, was dying. His son was facing charges for the boat case. He was facing a civil action that not only could potentially ruin him, but expose the reality of what he'd been doing for years. He had an opiate addiction. The entire illusion of his life was about to be altered. He couldn't live for that. He's the kind of person for which shame is an extraordinary provocation. Shame is an extraordinary provocation. His ego couldn't stand that, and he became a family annihilator.
A big point of contention in this case is Alec Murdaugh's slew of financial crimes. Murdaugh pleaded guilty in state court to stealing millions of dollars from his law firm and clients and was sentenced to 27 years behind bars. Now, federal prosecutors want that plea deal revoked over new claims that Murdaugh lied to FBI agents surrounding the whereabouts of $6 million, half of what prosecutors believe Murdaugh stole. During Murdaugh's double murder trial, he blamed his constant lying about stealing money on his opioid addiction.
Have you been criminally charged for those financial crimes?
I have been.
And you have pending charges against?
I do.
Okay. You were asked specifically about $792,000 in Ferris fees that you diverted from the law firm. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And I think you were asked about an accounting or where that money went, and it went out pretty quickly, roughly?
Yes, sir.
And you recall testimony that over $500,000 went to Curtis Eddie Smith?
I do.
And what would that have been for?
That would have all been for pills?
For opioids?
Yes, sir. Specifically, all I was taking at that time was oxycodone and OxyContin.
And you were an addict, were you not?
I am an addict.
You are an addict. And did you repeatedly lie to those you love to cover up your addiction?
I did.
And were you concerned that you would be exposed if you didn't continue to lie about your conduct?
I did.
In new court documents filed by federal prosecutors, the FBI says Murdaugh failed a polygraph test back in October. The test was conducted because FBI agents believed he lied in 3 previous interviews about the disappearance of that $6 million in stolen funds, and also the role of an unnamed attorney in his financial crimes. During Murdaugh's state sentencing hearing on financial crimes, the judge gave him a few words.
It's just unimaginable to me that you have done some of the things that you've done. And whether it's you or someone you become upon using drugs or through the process of just committing the crimes over and over the period of years. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know who I'm speaking to now. I know of no greater joy as a lawyer that I've had during my 47 years as a lawyer than the joy of having a satisfied client, of delivering good results for a client and experiencing that joy with them. I can think of no greater joy than I've experienced in being able to deliver on behalf of a client. And I'm sure you've experienced that joy as well until you decided that the only joy you're concerned about was your own. I take no joy at all in imposing this sentence, but it is what it is. And you'll have to suffer the consequences of your acts, continue to suffer the consequences, and hopefully some good will come out of you as you move forward.
Keep in mind, Murdaugh's pleaded guilty to separate financial crime charges on the federal level, and that sentence is expected to be handed down Monday. As part of Murdaugh's plea deal, his state and federal sentences were to be served concurrently, but federal prosecutors want his plea deal revoked in order to face the maximum prison sentence of over a century. And with that, let's bring in trial attorney Bob Hilla to talk about how this upcoming sentencing could play out. And I'm trying to understand why federal prosecutors, Bob, would want such a hefty sentence. I mean, Murdaugh is already serving life in prison without parole for double murder. Is this overkill or strategy?
Well, I think they're clearly trying to send a message here by seeking to withdraw that sentencing arrangement and now upping it by almost 3 times what it was. But again, it's going to come down, the judge has got to make a decision. Was that sentence the result of a fraud that was perpetrated on the court? And is the sentence that the court imposed adequate? Because even some of these arguments that the federal government may be making as a reason to open the case may not be things that the judge really gave weight to in giving the sentence. So all that's got to be considered by the court here.
Now, do you think Murdaugh's failed polygraph test could be considered an aggravating factor during his federal sentencing?
Well, polygraph is interesting because usually, it's not admissible, as we know, because there's a lack of reliability to that. The issue that it seems to be asserted for here is that he lied to prosecutors and the FBI. The real question is, did he lie? And what's the evidence of that? I think that's what the court is more inclined to look at than to kind of rest a substantial departure from what was already done based on a polygraph or 2 polygraph failed tests. It might be more important if he passed it, not that he failed it.
This new development comes off the back of Colleton County Court Clerk Becky Hill resigning from her position this week. Murdaugh's defense team already tried to push for a new trial after her jury tampering allegations. And although that was denied, there's still an ongoing investigation into her conduct by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. Depending on that internal investigation, could Murdaugh's defense team have grounds for another appeal on his murder conviction?
Well, they may be able to assert a good faith basis to have the court take another look at it, but the court already looked at that issue and determined that there was no need to reopen the case or reverse the verdict and the sentence. The question is, was her conduct such that it impacted the verdict in this case or what the jurors did? So that kind of is an issue that's gone. The only issue in terms of whether she misacted as a clerk and whether she should resign, that may be separate and apart from how it impacted the result of this case.
All right, Bob Hilla, thank you so much for weighing in on this continuing saga out of South Carolina. And stick with Law and Crime as we bring you the latest updates on all things Alec Murdaugh from Gavel to Gavel.